I'm Alyssa.
And I'm Mike.
Welcome back to True Crime Thursday. Hope everybody is having a great day, a great week. It's almost the weekend.
Yeah,
We're about,
almost the weekend.
we're about to kind of take it down, take the mood down a little bit. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
really isn't that much of a thing.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, I think we keep it lighthearted as lighthearted as you can when you're talking about like these kind of cases. So
True, exactly. That's why you guys should come to us for your true crime knowledge. Even
yeah,
though,
that's right.
to an extent, you might get false information, not the correct information, a lot of our
Yeah, some
opinion.
every now and then we get something wrong, but
But
not often.
not often, yeah. So today we are doing, I think how I would describe it is a surprising, shocking fall from grace is
Yeah,
this kind of story, because I think it's always a sad story when it's somebody is so successful and they just end up going down the wrong path that just ends up snowballing to a continuous bad path. Like
yeah,
anytime something
yeah.
like that happens with anyone, like even like celebrities, like bigger time
Right,
celebrities, when it happens,
right.
it's always very
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah, and this guy he had like everything going for him. Like he was kind of at the height of his career, the pinnacle of his career.
Yeah.
Um and just like he blew it. He threw it all away.
Yeah, so we are talking about Aaron Hernandez. He's a former NFL player,
Former
and
Florida Gator
he's a
too.
former Florida Gator. Um, and yeah, that's how I always knew him. Did you ever watch the documentary about him, by the way? Little
I
side
I
note.
haven't I haven't having being that we're doing this, I kind of wish I had because I'd
Yeah.
be a little more informed on. I'm pretty
Hmm.
informed on it, but
Yeah.
I'd be a little more informed.
It's pretty interesting because like they show a lot of the like the actual footage from that night, like they show like there was a ton of security camera footage and stuff, which
Yeah, yeah. That was
as
part of what came into play.
yeah, like what we've realized here is, guys, stop doing crimes. There's too many cameras
Yeah,
everywhere.
exactly. Well, and
Um,
this was what in 2012? Yes, 2012.
yes,
So
2012.
he so he was drafted to the Patriots in 2010, and
Yeah.
he played for them for he was actually drafted in the fourth round, which surprises me, but he played for them for 2 seasons. He had 175 receptions, 18 touchdowns. So he was a pretty high profile player for the Patriots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, reading about him, I also found out that well, first of all, he was born in 1989. So that's kind of crazy to me because he's not that much older than me.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. He was also born in Connecticut, which is also interesting because I never knew. I don't really know anybody that was born in Connecticut or lives in Connecticut, actually. You don't really hear too much about Connecticut, period, actually,
Yeah,
as
that's true.
a state.
Yeah.
Um, so let me go down to my timeline notes. Okay. So, yeah, so outside of him being a great football player, his outside life was starting to become very unstable. He maintained connections with individuals involved in a lot of criminal activity, alleged criminal activity, and he was also allegedly linked to multiple violent incidents,
Right.
some of which had gone under the radar for years.
Yeah, that's the case I mentioned. The 2012 case was actually before the big case that he
The
was
actual,
that he
yeah.
was that one actually happened, like you said, under the radar. It happened, and he was, still in his career in the NFL. So crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, the 2012 Boston double homicide happened on July 16th. and it was a drive-by shooting in Boston. It killed Daniel De Abreu and
That would
Safiro
be a.
Furtado.
I think that
Abreu,
would be Abreu. Abreu.
Abreu. Um, you know, I never promised to not butcher words here on the A&M podcast.
Names,
Okay.
names, names are different. Names are different. You can butcher names.
So at the time, Aaron was not charged, but later is when they linked him to this crime. Um, which that kind of goes back to even when we talk about other cases, like people doing cases and it like being sometimes shoot like 20, 30 years before they're caught.
Right.
Like to do that and then just continue living your life, always crazy to me. Like you're just that's that fact or whatever that we did the other
Interestingly,
day.
though, he was charged and convicted of that, but actually, at one point, he was also acquitted. They vacated the conviction. And
Yeah.
then, well, we'll get into it. That's later. There's more to that later in the story. There's a lot more to this story than I actually remembered. Like, I remember it at the time when it happened. I remember because he had been a Florida Gator, really kind of paying attention to the case. And yeah, it went a lot more places than I remembered it went. So continue.
So then in June of 2013, that is when the murder of Odin Lloyd happened. So Odin was a semi-professional football player and was dating the sister of Hernandez's fiance. So his
Right.
soon to be sister-in-law, right?
Right.
That's how that happens. So on June 16th, 2013, Odin Lloyd was picked up by Hernandez and two other people. In the early hours of June 17th, that's when Odin was found dead in an industrial park near Hernandez's home in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. To kill somebody and just leave their body somewhere like that is just crazy.
Yeah.
And then I can't even imagine being the person that finds that. Ugh.
Also true, right?
Um, so police quickly began to focus on Hernandez as a suspect. The key evidence that they had with this was surveillance footage showing Hernandez with Lloyd that night. You know, that's a
Right.
no-brainer. And then there were also text messages suggesting that Odin felt uneasy before meeting him. And then there was
Yeah, he sent
also
he sent a text something to his fiance or his girlfriend. I don't know if they were engaged, but that was something like,
fiance,
"Do you
yeah.
know who I'm with?" or something like that or something to that effect.
So sad.
Yeah.
Um, there was also evidence that Hernandez had destroyed his home security camera system.
Yeah.
Sketch.
Yeah.
Um, so on June 26, 2013, about 10 days later, that is when Aaron Hernandez was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Within hours, the New England Patriots released him. That's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, cuz he was with them 2 years
Mm-hmm.
and so he was on track to have,
A good
especially with a
career.
team like the Patriots in the 2010 2012 era, like, there was potential to really like do something there. And he like I said, I mean, I read the stats. He was performing for them. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just crazy,
Yeah,
crazy
no.
to put yourself in that position.
Even when he was on the Gators, like he was just one of those names that that's where like it's so unfortunate because if he didn't get into so much trouble out out off the field, he really could have made such a big name for himself. And I don't see
Yeah.
him being just a player that is
Yeah,
just released
he
and then a normal person,
yeah,
like
no,
living a
he
regular
was
life.
he was a standout. He was definitely
Hmm.
a standout. Yeah.
Yeah. And being on a team like the Patriots and having that is
Yeah, in that era.
whoa. Wait, chat. My My little thing just freaked out. Did you hear that? Siri started
I'm
talking to me.
just a little bit, although I'm sure by the time this goes, all the audio processing of that you won't.
True. Okay. So now I just brought attention to something that didn't
Yeah,
need it.
they won't know what we're talking about.
Uh, okay, so he was arrested. Then in 2015, that's when the murder trial started for the Odin Lloyd case. Um, it was a lengthy trial, and he was eventually found guilty on April 15th, 2015. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2017, so 2 years later, he was later tried for the 2012 Boston double homicide. On April 14th, 2017, almost 2 years later to the date, he was acquitted of those charges.
Right.
I wonder, like, what the logic behind, like, he was already in jail for life for this trial for 2 years before they were like, hey, also, and
I
no
mean,
possibility of parole or anything, what they
yeah.
would like go back and I guess just to like hold
The,
someone accountable.
yeah, I think it's to hold them accountable, but I also think it's like let's say that on appeal, because I don't know if he had appeals going or anything like that for the first conviction. Let's
Right.
say, let's say 5 years later, they find that something went wrong in that first trial and the conviction's thrown out.
Oh,
And
right.
now he's free. And these other people that were now murder, they could at that point then go, okay, well, now we're going to, charge you with these murders because you
True.
also did these. Um, but I think that's why they do it. It's just it's probably both, a little both. They want to hold somebody accountable for what they've done, but also as kind of a backup
True.
of if something goes wrong with the other conviction, he's still going to stay in on this.
Because they can't just be like, oh, well, we do know who did this murder for the like this completely separate case, but he's already in jail, so
Yeah, yeah.
for a different murder.
Yeah.
I just think that's crazy. Like you've already been in jail for 2 years, and it's like, hey, we need you in court.
Yeah, right. Right. Now you have to stand trial for these other
For
cases.
these other cases, yeah. So he was acquitted of those charges, though. And then on April 19th, 2017, a few days after he was acquitted for that, yeah, 5 days after his acquittal,
Yeah.
he was found dead in his prison cell. His death
Yeah.
was ruled a suicide.
This is one of the aspects of this case, excuse me, that I had somehow totally forgotten. Like in my mind when we talked about doing this case, I was thinking he was still in prison. I had totally forgotten that happened.
Yeah, no, and so a little backstory too on him that's really sad is so he still had a fiance during this time,
Hmm.
and from what I believe, I believe they mentioned this in the documentary on him. You should watch it sometime if you're, you know,
Yeah,
with all that
I'm
free
gonna.
time you have. But
Yeah.
it's like a good, something to put on at night or whatever. I'm pretty sure like she would come and visit him in jail because he also had a daughter. He had a really young daughter at
Oh,
the
right.
time. And I still follow his I don't know if like his former fiance. I follow her on Instagram and she posts pictures
Hmm.
of like their daughter all the time and stuff and every time her a picture of her or whatever comes across the screen it's like man that's I just think I just saw something the other day because she's a little older now
Sure.
and yeah so sad.
Yeah. I mean, and when you look at the actual conviction, like they didn't have the gun. This is another case that's surprising from the standpoint of they didn't have the gun. Um, they didn't have any like real physical evidence that tied him there. Like I don't know, did they? I didn't really find anything about them finding any of like his DNA on the body or the guys. And even if they did, it kind of goes back to the thing. Well, yeah, of course we were at the nightclub, that night. We had been at a nightclub that night, so you
Yeah.
know, um, but So they didn't find a murder weapon. A lot of it had to do with text messages between the two of them and the timing of the
Hmm.
text messages. I guess there was a rental car that Aaron
Yeah.
Hernandez had that they, based on the GPS, they were able to track it near the scene. Um, what else? There was some testimony from people, but it sounded like that was more just about the two of them being together, that night and getting into some kind of an argument over something. Although I didn't find anything clear on what that was, what the argument was about.
Yeah, I feel like just the fact that they were, I mean, that happens with a lot of even when like with significant others, whenever there's a dead person, they always go to the significant other, and that's like the first thing they ask, like, have you guys been fighting lately? What was your last
Yeah.
conversations about? So, I mean, the fact that they were together, he was the person that he was last with him, and he felt uneasy getting into the car, and they had an argument. Like, I think too many things pointed to him doing it, and not enough pointed to even the possibility that somebody else would do it, or why somebody else would do it, or
Right.
anything like that.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's this like expectation though, and it's mostly based on like uh fictional crime TV shows
Hmm.
where like they get convictions because like they find the smoking gun, literally or figuratively, because they make it that like cases where there's only like circumstantial evidence, you never get a conviction, especially a first
Hmm.
degree murder conviction. You're never going to get that on that kind of case. And
Yeah.
we've talked about a few of them now, that's been the case. Speaking of one other one, the Scott Peterson one, God bless you.
Thank you.
Um, that case was also heavily, and again, um, was heavily based on circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
I don't know if we got a message from a comment from somebody who one of our listeners or
Yeah.
viewers, I don't know which, but anyway, um, who uh, sent some information or had mentioned a whole other timeline. I think we kind of hinted at it last time for that case,
Yeah.
and I kind of had asked them, do you have any details, you could share with us? We'd love to talk about. They actually they pointed us to a website that has these details on things that are like contrary to what we know about the case, what all the verified information on the cases, and it's kind of fascinating. I mean, because
Oh, really?
there is a group that's trying to get his conviction like overturned as a result of all of that.
Scott
So
Peterson?
it is interesting. Yeah, yeah.
That's
So that
crazy.
that part of it is interesting, but it goes back to, I feel like if you had that physical evidence, you had his fingerprints on a gun, and a gun that was registered to him and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
that it's a lot less likely to have the circumstantial evidence. Can you stop doing that, please? Thank you. I don't know if you realize, but that's coming over on the mic. Um, but but uh, but yeah. So I feel like that's like the case where you know go not specifically just with this case, but with this case also, with something like the Scott Peterson one, that's a case where if there is contrary evidence to what the conviction was done on, that case could be overturned. So that's why you do want those additional um, kind of
Charges, yeah.
charges where they're relevant.
I guess I see it like there's just never going to be that, or not always, not never, but not always going to be that perfect scenario of like a weapon left behind. Like, for the most part, I think most people who are committing these crimes, they're not smart by any means, but I think most of them are smart enough to like not leave a weapon found.
Right. Right.
So, like, I mean, look at Brian Koberger.
Right.
he didn't leave his weapon behind. He left the knife sheath behind, and that's ultimately what connected him to the case. But, let's say that he was more on top of it and took the knife sheath back with him, then you don't have a weapon at all. And, especially
Right.
even when it comes to like a gun, there's so many cases where they just assume most of the time they take that gun, they shoot someone with it, take it, and throw it in the river somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then it's
Yeah.
gone essentially forever. Someone might
Right.
find it 40 years from now, but, you know, you can throw it in
Yeah.
a lake somewhere. So I think like finding a murder weapon in most cases, I would be willing to say it has to be like less popular than you would think. Like you kind
Yeah.
of have to
Well,
go
and
by circumstantial to an extent.
I mean, I think where they would have that is if it was like they catch the person shortly after. In other words, they commit the murder, and while they're trying to get away, they catch them and they've got the gun on them still.
Yeah.
In those cases, you're gonna have the weapon. And there are
Yeah.
cases where people, think that they were clever enough that they don't have to get rid of the gun because, you know, I did everything else right. I, didn't leave any fingerprints and all that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, but and then there was another kind of uh interesting aspect of this case that again I don't think I heard about this at all. But after the fact, after his death, that is, he was diagnosed with stage 3 chronic traumatic, yeah, encephalopathy. See, I can't pronounce it. CTE, which is basically the what football players and I guess other sports players get from repeated concussions, from repeatedly getting concussions. It's like it's a brain injury basically
Yeah,
that they get. I
so
guess a disease.
that's what the documentary was a lot about as well. Like it talked about the case and stuff, but that's what it was going into a lot is yeah, like brain injuries in football players basically, and that's why after his death, they did end up literally taking his brain and studying it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that can only be they can only find that you have that after death. Like they don't have a way to find out that you have that while you're alive.
That's
But
so crazy.
so it makes me wonder a couple things. First of all, how does someone commit suicide in prison? Like honestly, how is there possibly a circumstance where you've got access to something? Because here's the way I look at it. If I have access to things that allow me to kill myself in prison, that means I have access to things that I could use to kill someone else in prison. And how is that ever the case?
That's
And
how there's stabbings all the time in prison. They'll literally
yeah,
turn their toothbrush into a
yeah, they
like
sharpen
a
it. But well, you know what? Then you don't get to keep your toothbrush. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, no, I get
If
it.
you can't, it's like a little kid. If you can't be trusted with it, you don't get to have it. Um, but it does make me wonder too, assuming that he committed suicide, because, I always get suspicious when somebody commits suicide in prison. There's all the things with Jeffrey Epstein where he committed suicide, but, they just conveniently, the cameras weren't rolling and all that. Um, but assuming he did commit suicide, it makes you wonder, did he commit suicide out of, hopelessness because and he did leave apparently several suicide notes. So this may be answered in one of those, but I don't think the full text of any of those is out anywhere. Um, but did he do it because, hopelessness because, hey, I'm going to be in prison for the rest of my life. I can't do this. Was it out of guilt because you know, and I kind of doubt that because he had done this more than once over a several year span. Um, or was it because of the CTE?
Well, there is a reports that say, because everyone was really confused back then, like why did he do that so soon after being acquitted?
Right.
He still had to stay in jail, but um, there were notes left behind that suggested complex emotional struggles. And then, yeah,
Which,
obviously the severe brain damage, like,
yeah. Well, the
didn't help.
emotional struggles too could be like you wonder if they had a way to know about the CTE before his trial for the murder, would that have been, could they have used that somehow as a, you know, not guilty because he had this brain injury? You know what I'm
So,
saying?
with the brain injury, I'm just reading here. It says, yeah, that his brain injury was one of the worst cases ever seen in someone his age, which is crazy because he was pretty young when he
Hmm.
did that. Um, and that the symptoms include aggression, impulsivity, paranoia, and emotional instability.
So
So,
there we are. So
there
there
you
we are.
go.
So that very well could have been, I mean, not that you're looking for an excuse for why someone commits murder, but
Right.
that could have been, what put him in the mindset to do those things. Um,
Mm.
so the one thing that I read that was kind of interesting though, too, it said that like, so after he died, his conviction was temporarily vacated. So in other words,
Mm-hmm.
he died in prison and basically they said, yeah, you know what? You're no longer guilty of that. Um, and there's some legal doctrine that they mention, uh, abatement ab initio. I don't know what that means. It's probably Latin, and I don't speak Latin. Um, but basically, in 2019, then um,
Just pig Latin.
they reinstated his conviction. So, and it will be that way forever. So he is legally considered guilty of the murder, and it'll stand permanently. So, but
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting because I don't. I'd like to know more about why, after somebody dies like that, they would vacate the conviction. Like, what's the thought behind that? What's the thought process involved with saying, you know what? No, he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I do know like once this happened and especially once they studied his brain, there was a lot more talk of um like athlete mental health and
Right.
the brain
Right.
injuries in football. Like that was a big thing in the documentary again that they talked about was like the brain injuries involved with football and actually taking concussion seriously and yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
talked a lot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Yeah, and
yeah.
I mean now they have whole different protocols for how they deal with concussions too. Like
Oh,
if a guy
really?
gets a concussion, they're in game, if they get a concussion, they're automatically out for, I don't know, at least 2 weeks. They
Oh,
can't
really?
play because the thing with
Yeah.
that is if you've had a concussion,
Still doesn't really help long term, but yeah.
well, yeah, but if you've had a concussion, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm not a doctor, but I believe that the issue is if you've had a concussion and then while your brain, your skull, whatever is in that concussed state, if something happens to you again, that's where it can really like do damage. That's where you can,
Oh,
you
right.
know, it's not like just repeatedly getting concussions, although that's also not good for you.
Like
But it's
reopening a
like if
wound
something
before it's
happens,
healed.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
exactly,
No.
exactly.
Hmm. Yeah, very sad, a very sad case. It's not, it's like one of those, one of those examples of how somebody can, what do they always say? Money does not buy happiness. And
It does not.
I think that is a big,
I think what they say is more money, more problems. Isn't that what they say?
it is. But then, with that, I feel like, more money would solve all my problems. So.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. That's we always think that if we're, I don't know. I tend to think it would solve some.
Yeah.
It depends on how you treat the money. I think that's it.
Yeah, true. So,
Because this actually could be a case that he had become so successful and was, doing so well financially that he had a little bit of maybe arrogance about this, that, you know, he didn't think that it would be an issue, or didn't think he'd get caught, or
There was also a oh, okay. Oh, wow. Ah. So, I just read and then it took it away. So
yeah,
apparently he committed suicide by hanging himself with a bed sheet.
shouldn't have bed sheets. I mean, I
Yeah.
know, that they do treat people differently who they think are potentially, who they think could do something like that. I know they do treat them differently, but um, yeah, um, yeah.
Mhm.
I think you had mentioned this, but for his age, his his CTE was actually very severe because he was stage 3, and there are 4 stages of CTE. So he was one stage below the most severe, which is yeah, that part of it's also a shame.
I think it's really crazy they can't see that until the person is already dead.
Right.
Hold on.
Oh, okay. So this is interesting. Under Massachusetts law, a conviction could be vacated if a defendant died during appeal. So, in other words, because there was an appeal in process and he died, that's where they do that, where they vacate the conviction, and clear the record. But it says in this case, in 2019, the Massachusetts Supreme Court reversed that practice. So his oh, okay, so they actually reversed that process altogether. So they don't even do that anymore. Which I can understand why they would do it, because then, your appeal process, let's say you didn't do it and you died in prison, and now your appeal process obviously isn't going to continue because
Mhm.
you're dead. But what if you didn't do it, and it's on record that you did it? I can understand like why they would do that. But yeah, yeah, I don't know.
Um, what's interesting about how he committed suicide? I'm pretty sure that's how they said that Jeffrey Epstein also committed suicide.
Yes, they did.
Hanging yourself with a bed sheet attached to a
Yeah.
fixture in your
Although,
cell.
yeah, although in Jeffrey Epstein's case, it was allegedly, I think, a paper bed sheet because he was
Oh, he was.
on suicide watch.
Mm.
So he had paper bed sheets. So I don't know. Apparently, he had learned how to do origami and create a noose out of paper.
You know, that's kind of I don't know, that's kind of crazy. A paper bed sheet. Why wouldn't they just give all of the paper bed sheets? I mean, I kind of get that. I'm not saying like this is condoned or anything like that. Disclaimer. But, I think the mindset also could just be like I am in this life sentence. Screw this, actually.
Yeah,
Especially when you're already emotionally unstable or mentally unstable,
right.
it's kind of yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, guys.
I'm just, yeah, yeah. This one's a sad one, just because of the. I mean, to your point, the daughter, um, the state in his life that he was very young. He
Mhm.
really had, like, the world was his oyster. He had a lot going for him, and yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame.
Yeah. With these kind of cases, especially with like more famous type type personalities, you really think like, wow, where would they be now if that didn't happen? Like,
Right,
who knows
right.
what team he would be playing on, if he would still be with the Patriots,
Hmm.
like where he would
Yeah,
be or
I don't know if he'd still be playing at this point. That's what, 14 years ago, so he
so
probably
he's
would no
like
longer be playing.
36.
Yeah, he might be. I mean,
Crazy.
how old is Gronkowski?
I don't know. I don't know that.
Was was he? I have no reference of time frame for when any of these guys were at the Patriots because I'm not a Patriots fan.
If
But
you were born in 1989, you're 36.
yeah,
So,
okay, so yeah, that's true.
Tom Brady's way older than that, and he was playing just
True,
recently,
true, true. Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Let's see. Oh, guess what?
Hmm.
That's the age Gronkowski is, and Gronkowski retired 3 years ago. So that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah,
would he still be playing? Would he maybe be doing what Gronkowski's doing and doing announcing and that kind of thing?
true.
Maybe. We don't know. We don't know, and we never will because it didn't happen. Yeah, some other facts. They said they found footprints or shoe imprints from a rare pair of Nike sneakers at the scene, like a very rare pair, which would suggest they're expensive. Um,
Oh, I
but
think
they
that's
didn't
something
find
in,
those in his
yeah,
house. And they also said there was surveillance video of him carrying a box into his house when he got home after the time frame of the murder. The speculation is that the gun was in that box. That box was never found at the house. So,
could have had his sneakers in it as well.
but yeah, could have had the sneakers in it, right? Might have been a shoebox. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like most of them that we talk about on here. It's just sad what people let themselves get involved in.
Yeah,
So don't do that. That's our
yeah.
advice.
So surround yourself with good people, guys, that aren't going to get you in trouble, or
Right.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's our case today, guys.
So if you learned something or you didn't learn something, and if anything we said was wrong, correct us. And especially if you have details that we didn't cover, definitely let us know.
Yeah. Have a great day, everybody,
And a good weekend.
and a good weekend.